So, Jenna, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. Inspired and impact.
Yeah, thanks for
I
having
really,
me.
I really appreciate you being here. Um, can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself, like who you are, and a little bit about your background, so people have a better understanding about
Yeah,
yourself?
there's a lot about my background that has led me to where I am today. I started off being very young military spouse. I was at the tender age of 21 getting married into the military, and I've spent the last 20 plus years affiliated with our military community, whether it be just serving as a spouse or helping out the spouse community. But throughout that time, I moved to 3 different duty stations, 3 different states. I have 4 amazing children that I get to sometimes pour some wisdom into when they wanna take advice from mom. And yeah, we just lived that lifestyle for so long. I'm really excited about the topic that you and I are gonna discuss today because so much that comes from that lifestyle, comes from that experience that can easily really tear someone down and really make someone feel like they're lost in this world. They don't know what to do with themselves or especially in our veteran community, not understanding what to do next with their life. You spend so much time with this identity and name tag on that when that's taken away, you don't know where you fit in and where you belong. So that's in a nutshell, a very, very big nut or small nutshell about who I am, but I'm excited to dig into this more with you.
Sure. I'm sure you've spoken to other military spouses, and do you find that's like from the people that you spoke with? Is that like a common like theme or experience that allowed them don't have like a strong identity, or they're not sure the direction or the purpose in life?
100%. When like I said, most of us get married when we're younger, it's very enticing to have that stability and we fall in love and the adventure of where are we going to go to, where are we going to live? Maybe we're going to experience a new location. You don't really understand what you're signing up for, and that's one thing that I was told a lot from outsiders was, "Well, you knew what you were signing up for," and I always say, "I absolutely did not know what I was signing up for," and I honestly believe that the service member doesn't know what they're signing up for either. I mean, you think that you're going into this really exciting you are going into a really exciting adrenaline rushed situation, but you aren't really knowing all the time that you're gonna spend apart. Especially for the spouses, and for me, I'll never forget the very first time that I knew, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to be in this alone a lot." That was shortly after we had gotten married. I was in a car accident and was pregnant and lost the child. My husband was gone on a training, and he wasn't able to come home, and I had to go through that whole experience by myself. And that is a PG rated version of what a lot of spouses do have to go through on their own. Loss, grief. We always say that Murphy's Law is gonna have something happen while our spouse is gone. It never fails that the service member leaves and the roof leaks or the dishwasher goes out. Some things can be really small, some things can be really big. We're kind of fighting for survival in those moments. Next thing you know, it's 10 years down the road, at least in my experience, 10 years down the road, asking myself, what was all of this for? What have I gained from this? What have I learned? How did I get to where I am now? Because I didn't like where I was. I felt completely lost. I felt completely defeated. My identity was completely wrapped into being that support role to my spouse because there was this underlining expectation that that's what we do, right? I was never told that, but you just kind of know your husband's off fighting for our country, serving humanity, and doing all these heroic, amazing things. So your job is to stay home, make sure everything's taken care of. No matter how many children you have, make it happen. And it can be really isolating. It can be really lonely because you don't feel you'll have your core group of other spouses that you'll connect with and turn to, but primarily you're really isolated because you'd assume and have this knowing that they're going through their own stuff too. So you just kind of suffer in silence and wait for it to blow over. As you and I know, that's not the way to heal. That's not the way to really move forward in growth. So yeah, it's been definitely the common thread working with these spouses and getting to the root and foundation of what they're experiencing and how they got there. The commonness of, oh my goodness, 10 years have passed and I wasn't even paying attention. That's the big one is it happened so fast.
Wow. So I'm so sorry that you had to go through all that. That was special alone. I'm sure you're just giving us the short and cliff notes of everything you had to go through. So I'm really sorry. I don't. You're a good natured person, and nobody should suffer anything like that
Yeah.
alone. But here you are on the other side. I was just curious to know, though. You mentioned you felt alone several times. Does the military have any support groups at all that offer to people in the military?
There's definitely a lot more available now than there was when we were enlisted, and each branch is gonna have their own support group. For us, it was called the FRG or the Family Readiness Group. The thing about it is it can kinda get lost in translation sometimes. I mean, I'll give you an example. I just did an event for a group at Fort Campbell, and I know a spouse whose husband is in that group, and I asked her, "Are you coming to this event?" And she had no idea that it was even happening. And it's not because they're not promoting it, it's just there's so many lines of communication, and primarily it's going through the service member, so it doesn't necessarily always get to the spouse on like, "Hey, this is available to you. This is something that you should be involved in." I mean, we got Facebook pages, Instagram pages, but how many Facebook groups are you a part of? And how many times are you getting alert? Unfortunately, a lot of the times the spouses really have to search for it themselves. When you've got all of your ducks in a row, by the end of your day, the last thing you want to do is go Google through and research through what support groups are there for me. And a lot of spouses will feel like, well, someone else probably needs the help more than I could probably figure this out. And there's a sense of pride to say, you know what, I figured all of this out, so I can figure this out too. That happens a lot in our veteran community, especially with my husband who won't go to the VA because there are other service members that need that more than he does. So you'll find that type of attitude a lot as well.
Wow, that's really enlightening. I didn't serve in the military, so as an outsider, that's really interesting. I had no idea that that was even happening. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Can you maybe also share with us about how did you pivot into this new trajectory of healing and growth versus what you were going through before, like feeling alone? How did that happen?
Well, it occurred in a way that I hope others don't have to go through. I just want to preface what I'm about to share with that because it's not something that I'm condoning, recommending, or suggesting. For me, it was divorce. We ended up going through a divorce during transition out of the military, which also unfortunately is very common when we have a service member approaching their retirement or getting out of the military. You typically will have a spouse who is thinking, great, now I'm going to have a normal life or whatever normal looks like. We're going to not be um, told where to live, where to go, when to go. We're going to have more control over our own lives. What we don't really think about is the service member also goes through their own identity crisis when they get out of the military, not knowing what they're going to do. It's almost like a role reversal. And so, unfortunately, that will lead to divorce a lot. And that was my case. When that happened, pour into what it is that I needed to be a strong mother and a healed mother for my children. 'Cause obviously, it was really hard for them. Lots of transition at that time. I poured into a lot of books, the typical cliches, self-help books, but I also joined a mastermind group. That really was the start of the change for me because we're meeting together with like-minded people who are eager and hungry and really wanting for change, really wanting to strengthen themselves. I didn't know why at that time I had gone through that 10-year experience as a military spouse, but I knew for sure that I wanted to learn why. What did I learn from it more specifically? Because so many times we can go through any sort of trauma, huge, small, we think, okay, well, I got past it. I don't want to think about it anymore. If it ever comes up, I just kind of shove it down because it's in the past. There's several comments and quotes about don't look in the past, you're not going that way. But I always challenge those because their past leaves clues, failures leave clues, and it really gives you a good opportunity to grow from that. So a mastermind really helped with that, as well as spending a lot of time in prayer, spending a lot of time in the Bible and soul searching what it is that I felt like God was leading me to and calling me to. And even then, that took me several years of consistency. And I think a lot of times when people look forward and say, I want to heal, I want to grow, I want to have this momentum, it's the exact same as losing weight. It takes time, diligence, and consistency, and that can be really scary to commit to, especially if you've gone through something really traumatic.
Was there any particular book that stood out in your mind that really helped you? Was it like a combination of a lot of them that helped you propel you to be forward?
Yeah, it was a combination, really depended on what I was trying to accomplish in that moment. There's a Joe Dispenza book called Breaking Up with Yourself that really was great to read. I actually recently thought about reading it again because we all go through constant transitioning during our lifetime, and just the way to get unstuck in those habits that we form in our childhood and adolescence. Sometimes you hear people say, well, that's just the way I am, or that's just the way he is, or that's just the way she is. It's been really interesting with that book, learning how we don't have to be stuck there. Now, there's things that obviously are positive about those things. Like, well, she's always been generous or happy. Those are things that we don't want to change. But there are some things within all of us that we may say, I really want to change this about myself. We can easily revert to that saying, well, that's just the way I am. It's just the way I've always been. And it's the way I'm always gonna be. That was a really great book that I really enjoyed. There's also another book Jen Sincero wrote, You Are a Bad ASS. I don't know. But yeah, censorship on your podcast, but I really, really love that book because it just really she had a great way of getting into the core of you to be your own cheerleader, which is really hard for a lot of us to do. And then I would say the third book was really powerful as I journeyed into entrepreneurship, and that was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I think every single person should read that book. I gave it to my teenagers and I told them, if you read it, your life will be greater. If you don't, it's your life.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned before about starting to read the Bible. Were you in the past not the person of faith, and then you toward God, or is it like you always were a person of faith and it just got strengthened because of these issues of adversity?
I was raised in the church, but I was primarily a part-time Christian. I was a Christian when things really went bad, and I was like, God, help me, be there for me. Even through the divorce and the aftermath of that, I wasn't clinging to God like I really should have. I was looking towards other things that were supposed to bring all this love and light and healing. It would temporarily do that for me. But it was during COVID that I really started shifting. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine that really just personally touched me and had me reevaluate what I was doing, where I was putting my faith. I noticed during the original lockdown, I was really in the word. I was in prayer. We were all scared. We all had no idea what was going to happen. And we're all wiping our grocery bags and taking our clothes off in the garage so we don't bring COVID in, in that very, very beginning of it. And then when everything started to open up, it's almost as if I was like, all right, God, thanks so much. Appreciate you. It's over now. We can go back to our regularly scheduled activities. I was really open to more of the new age spirituality, Reiki, sound bowl healing, crystals, and things like that. And I was speaking to that friend about the difference between that new age spirituality and really putting your faith in Jesus Christ and in the Lord, and how different, you feel when you do that. There was just something about that conversation that really had me do self inventory. I was worshiping those things. I was genuinely thinking this crystal can heal me. I was genuinely believing someone putting their hands on different chakras was going to pull out, all these energies. I wasn't giving it to God. And that's really what brings us the most peace, what brings us the most joy. Since then, I can't, for legal reasons, talk about some things in detail, but I've had things happen where I even told my husband, I don't know how people go through this without having hope in Jesus, because that's literally how I've made it through.
I've had similar discussions with other people that switched from New Age to Christian or Christian to New Age. Do you think it's ever possible that they can both coexist? Like you can still do your crystal bowls and believe in Jesus, or you think that's really sacrilegious, or two separate systems that can't coexist?
I actually just had this conversation with one of my best friends because we had a friend of ours unfortunately lose her son. And when we all went to be with her and support her, one of her other friends brought her gifts, which was so nice. And she's giving her these crystals, and she's like, "And this one is for this, and it's gonna help you with that." And then she got to the last one and she was like, "And this one's for this, it's gonna help with healing, it's gonna help with your grieving." And I am not kidding. These were not my words. Like, I genuinely feel like the Holy Spirit shoved it out of my mouth because I said, "So does Jesus." And kinda looked at me, and I even almost myself was a little bit in shock, like, "Oh, I thought I was saying that in my head, but I said it out loud." Anyways, we were just talking about, well, her argument was, "I believe that God created these crystals and created these things for us to enjoy." In Revelation, it actually talks about the 5 different layers of crystals that heaven is made of. And I was like, "Yes, I believe they were created by God for us to enjoy and admire." What I personally don't believe in is I'm gonna hold a crystal and it's gonna rid me of cancer. That's me putting my faith in an object, not in Jesus Christ. Now, if I admire a crystal and I'm like, "Oh, this is so beautiful," and I have a crystal in my house, do I think that it's coexisting in a negative way? Not necessarily. But I've talked to so many people, and I've been one myself, where I see so much of the new age stuff cloud your mind, a wedge between what is really bringing us fullness and wholeness. That's been my experience, and that's been the experience of many others that I have talked to. And now I feel more connected to God than I ever have. I used to be not jealous, but really curious when people would say, "God spoke to me and he told me blah, 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 blah." I thought, does God speak to me? I don't know. Like, what is that? Are you hearing something? Is it a gut feeling? And you know how many times you think, was that God? I'm telling you, ever since I really started just focusing on him and that one on one relationship, I know exactly when he's talking to me. And I know exactly when it's my own human needs and desires saying, "I think you should do that." It's like, "No, that's not from God. That's not God telling me. That's definitely just my own desire trying to convince myself to do something."
That's really amazing. You definitely have some amazing gifts.
It's all trial and error, right?
Now, can you share with us, you started your own group called Service in the Soul. What is that? What do they do? Who do they
Yeah.
help?
Yeah. Service and soul happened by accident. It was definitely God ordained, but not because he told me to. I'll make this really short, but it matters to the story on how it all came together. I was at a marriage retreat with my husband, and I met this woman there who said to me, we're just getting to know each other. And she said, "Yeah, I actually am a book publisher and I teach people how to write a book, a number one best-selling book." And I said, "Well, I've always wanted to write a book. I would love to hear more." So I ended up hiring her and went out to Malibu to write my book with her. I wrote this book with her sun up to sundown in 6 days. I had the bulk of it done in 6 days. And I was so excited about it. At that time, I was in real estate and I actually wrote the book for realtors. to find a work-life balance. I was gonna really change the game on, these realtors and, who think that, say that real estate never sleeps. I'm like, I think we should have boundaries. I was a part of another mastermind called G Force, and the owner of that mastermind, I've known her for several years. So she knows me on a personal level. So I'm telling her about this book idea and how genius it is. And she looks at me very matter of fact and said, no. And I was like, what do you mean, no? She said, that's not what you're passionate about. You're passionate about helping other military spouses like you. That's who you need to write your book for. I just looked at her and I was like, yeah, but there's no business model there. There's no, like, am I going to spend all this money on publishing and design when I don't even think anyone wants that? She said, very matter of fact, when God puts something on your heart and you follow that calling, He's going to open the doors you need opened. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do then. And ever since then, Service and Soul, that was just supposed to be a hobby book, turned into this business of we do workshops, I do speaking engagements. The book has done very well. It is a number one best-selling book on Amazon, and we have a community group on Facebook, and it's really a place for us to come together and see, okay, it's not just me. I'm not the only one feeling that way. I would say the biggest thing that many of us feel is guilt for feeling a certain way. My husband is a humanitarian special operator. He goes all over the world responding to natural disasters and combating human trafficking. He's gone like when he was in the military. And so there are still times where in my head, I am just like, no, I don't want you to go. I hate your job. I want you to be home all the time. But I can't say that out loud. He's doing incredible world changing things. This group helps me too, because I still have those feelings and frustrations. The complexities are very similar in military versus first responder space. So it's really just a great area to do that. I really try to make sure I can keep resources coming to the group. So whether it's looking for a job, resume writing, like recently I posted one, this nonprofit is giving free photography classes to military spouses, networking opportunities, just anything that I can do to help bring more resources for that community is what Service and Soul is about. For speaking engagements and workshops, we go through different activities and coaching on finding what your purpose is outside of your role to your service member and really figuring out what is it that I'm meant to do here on earth. So that's basically what we do.
Now, do service like spouses, do they have to be living in a certain local area, or is it for like anybody, United States or anywhere in the world they can be living?
Yeah, it's for anybody in the world. And the way that it's been working up until now is we get hired out by corporations, nonprofits, different other organizations that primarily either support military spouses or hire military spouses and veterans. They'll bring me in as a resource, as an added tool, or even in a way, a give back to that community to really help strengthen their confidence. There's a lot of groups that will help with things like resume writing, job placement, things like that, which is all amazing and great. But what I argue is we've got something that we need to heal on a foundational level for these women and men. We do have men come to our workshops and classes. There's a confidence that needs to be rebuilt in them that will snowball into whatever company or organization has hired them, because it really snowballs into the family. That confidence builds retention. It builds confidence in the workplace. You're working with your peers a lot better. You have a better attitude. You can handle more stress because you're not all carrying all this baggage and darkness from things we all try to shove down and push away.
Well, it's wonderful you offer that service. I'm sure there's a lot of people that need it. And that's why I'm so happy that you're coming on the podcast so we can help you put this out there to as many people as possible. And where do you see the future of service and soul? Have you thought about that? Like, where would you like to take it in the future, or not yet? Or is it like you take things step by step?
Oh, yeah, I've thought about that since day one. I have thought about that a lot, yes. I've had different visions, to be completely honest. Essentially having ambassadors all over the world who are trained by me to host workshops near military bases and have quarterly events for, other spouses in the area. That to me would be a global, desire that I think would be incredible. And then the other is just seeing well, that would be more on a nonprofit level, partnering with other nonprofits to say, "Hey, we have this resource available to you in your area. Here's our events. Please send people to those." And then the other vision was for profit saying, "Hey, I'm building a team for this. We offer, we're certified in these different areas because I'm obviously not going to be certified in every area. So I partner with other coaches who can help come in other areas of the consciousness and help people break down traumatic barriers or emotional roadblocks. I have this incredible team. Let's have a meeting. Let's talk about what it is that you're wanting for your group to come out of, and I can have the appropriate coaches for whatever you need. So whether it is just a full day workshop or whether it's a retreat somewhere that, company organization is wanting to put on for their community.
That's great. And how can people get in touch with your business? Should they go to the website or Facebook group? Or is there any particular preference?
Any and all things, definitely going to serviceandsoul.com can get you connected to all of the places that you need to get connected with me. Just the easiest way to reach out to me for sure.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being so brave and coming on here and sharing your story because I think it's going to help a lot of people. The name of the podcast is Inspire and Impact. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. You're such a great guest to be on this podcast. And it's
Thank you.
wonderful to see people like you making such a positive difference in people's lives because you said there's a lot of people that feel like there's no hope, that they don't know where to go. But as you were just sharing with us, there is a resource called
Yeah.
Service for the Soul, as well as many others. And there's hope and support for people that may feel troubled or alone or confused. Who can I talk to? This is so wonderful.
Mhm.
Championing, inspiring spouses in the military.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Likewise. Was there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I feel like no matter who's listening or what, stage of life you're in, you always have someone to inspire. Just know that you are loved, you are being championed and cheered on by so many people that you don't even know are cheering for you.
That's wonderful, Jenna. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Thank you.